think Lynn has a reading for us. Which she will deliver as soon as she unmutes herself.
All right. The first reading is by Robin Tanner. It's entitled Anyway Post-Election. When I was a small child, about 10 years old, my town had a terrible flood. We lived on a peninsula between a lake and a swamp. The lake was lowered every year in the fall through a canal lock system. But this year, the highway authority had taken over responsibility. Needless to say, the highway authority miscalculated how much they needed to lower the lake. Combined with their error was a nasty blizzard that winter. As the rains came in the spring, I stood at the window watching the waters break over the seawalls and then the sandbags and make their way up to our lawn. Eventually, the streets had water several feet deep. You could see fish swimming across the street, including long-nosed pike. We were lucky. Our house was on a hill. At some point, my dad suited me up in waders and told me that we needed to build up the sandbag walls for our neighbors. I put on the rubber legs, pulling the straps over my chest with the duty of a soldier. I had long legs, and as I walked out to the canoe waiting to transport me, I thought I was tall enough to take one more step in the waters before climbing into the boat. I miscalculated the dip between the drive and the road. Water filled my waders. I still remember that panic. I started to scramble. It felt like I was being tied down with cement blocks. I remember my dad's voice muffled by the rush of blood pulsing in my ears, until at last I could hear him say, "Stay calm, stand up." Sure enough, I could stand, water up to my chest. I had enough room to wiggle free from the waders and climb, albeit drenched like a wild-eyed cat, into the boat. I've been thinking about the poem penned by Kent Keith, whose first line is, "People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway." I don't know about you, friends, but post-election, I've been building my own anyway list to help remind myself when the water starts to pour over the top of the waders that there is a paradox to this time if we can listen past our panic. So a few things I've heard. It will feel as if there's too much to feel, too much to offer compassion for, too many people to protect and love and protect them anyway. If you break silence and speak out, or if you are bold, or if you do something that shines, even your allies may come for you. Shine on anyway. You will try and fail. Try anyway. Your greatest heroes will disappoint you, especially up close. Get close anyway. You will be confused and unsure of what to do next. Do what is next anyway. You will say the wrong thing, and you may look back horrified at something you once did. Speak anyway. There will be kindness and joy in the midst of pain. Feel it all any way you can.
Thank you, Lynn. How many of us remember the Occupy Wall Street movement? Many of us. How many took part in occupying a town or a business or educational institution? Few of us. How many knew that there are some Universalist and or Unitarian theologies at the base of Occupy? So at the peak of my Occupy participation, I joined hundreds of folks from around the country, and we encircled the Chicago Board of Trade. We were going to hug the building and bring some more love into capitalism. We also marched around and closed some of the streets in the Loop. And that felt more aggressive, honestly. and therefore perhaps effective. I don't know. Exactly 2 months before that march in Chicago, on September 17th, 2011, hundreds of peaceful protesters arrived on Wall Street in New York City right at the time of the opening bell for the stock market. And they eventually meandered over to gather in the nearby Zuccotti Park. All of these people were there because of a Adbusters magazine call, the image of which is on your order of service cover. A ballerina on top of the raging bull that is the symbol of the stock market. Eventually, over 2,000 occupations in over 60 countries would happen, including, I assume, the Occupy Valparaiso that I was part of. At least some people maintained their occupation through some snowstorms as we're getting into winter. And then billionaire New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg ordered Zuccotti Park's occupation closed, by which he meant bulldozed, on November 15th. Others lasted a bit longer, but by mid-December, with the holidays approaching and governments getting a little more hostile, Occupy realized that they were correct when they said that the 99% were more powerful than the 1%, and they realized they didn't really have a consistent, coherent message with which to use that strength. 3 months after it sprang into being, Occupy was largely done. It has left a legacy or two, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the thing I want to talk about some more today is how Unitarian Universalism and Occupy share some values. Peaceful resistance, a commitment to democratic process, inclusion of many different people. I talked about Occupy Valparaiso. There was a morning on the corner there that there were clearly some vegan hippies standing next to some folks who were wearing camouflage and had gun racks in their truck, and they were protesting together. We could use more of that, don't you think? And I must point out that neither Occupy nor Unitarian Universalism is ever great at truly welcoming people of color. We're working on it. The Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence in Massachusetts hosted an Occupy camp on their church lawn. First U in Hobart, Indiana, did allow some Occupy travelers to sleep in their basement on the way to Chicago. UUA President Morales visited Occupy Boston and actually held a UU Vespers service for the folks there in Boston. The UUA board also visited Occupy Boston, and our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee posted a letter online in support of the Occupy goals, and they allowed signatures, and by the time it was taken down, there were more than 4,200 people had signed that letter. So there's some UU support in with the Occupy place. And the legacy, I was talking to Becky this morning. She's like, yeah, but that was 12 years ago, and it kind of all just went away. I don't think much happened because of it. And fair, right? But as we heard Robin Tanner say, you will try and fail, try anyway. And some of the things you try will stick, and some of them will have a little bit of an impact. Some of the impacts that I see Occupy as having continue in our world, this concept of mutual aid, which is people taking care of people, not through a government system, not through any kind of hierarchy or bureaucracy, but individuals taking care of individuals, families taking care of other families. There are mutual aid societies in many, many cities around our globe. Gary and New Orleans are two that I'm most aware of, but we'll hear about Seattle as well. Volunteer healthcare, the Occupy places, especially the big ones, had medical personnel there to help with people. They were feeding people. They had the People's Library in Zuccotti Park, and they had an amazing array of books that you could check out and read and learn. And shortly after George Floyd was murdered by police in Seattle, in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle, they formed the Capitol Hill Organized Protest, the CHOP, which also went by the acronym CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And again, it was government for the people, by the people. They had a big mural that you probably saw that had Black Lives Matter, the entire width of a city block. It was painted on the street. They had film screenings that were free. They had live music being performed. They had a no-cop co-op with food and hand sanitizer, because this is in the middle of the worst part of the pandemic. There were set up areas for people to speak and disseminate information and facilitate discourse. There was a community vegetable garden set up. So there are ongoing experiments in what it means in self-government. I don't think Occupy started that, but it was one more step in that process. And some of the things we do here, we have a lot of unity gardens in South Bend. That's along the same stream, I would say. A bigger legacy of the Occupy movement is that more people understand the amazing wealth inequality in this country. People didn't really get that until Occupy called attention to it. And I dare say that a socialist would not have been on the ballot for president of these United States had not Occupy raised these issues. Bernie Sanders calls himself a democratic socialist, but he is not apologetic about the word socialist, and he got a bunch of votes for president. And I think maybe one of the biggest legacies is what they're continuing to do. So if you go to adbusters.org right now, it says this. This Sunday, on the 12th anniversary of Occupy Wall Street, a monumental climate action kicks off all around the world. Leading the way will be a march to end fossil fuels, powered by a coalition of over 1,200 grassroots and national organizations urging President Biden to take immediate action. The website continues to say, but something doesn't feel quite right here. It's all too vague, too abstract for its own good. It feels like a replay of what happened with Occupy Wall Street 12 years ago. Hordes of us descended on Lower Manhattan. A righteous pulse reverberated around the globe. 2,000 spin-off occupations in 60 countries. We had a lot of fun and politicized a whole generation. But at the height of the uprising, when we had the ear of the world, we didn't know what to say. We didn't have our memes figured out. We never came up with an answer to that question on the poster that launched it all. What is our one demand? This time, our one demand to world leaders must be crystal clear. Declare a global climate emergency by year's end, or we'll take your doomsday machine down. Friday after Friday, in hundreds of cities around the world, let's ramp up the intensity of our civil disobedience until our leaders agree to act. End quote, exclamation point. Maybe their legacy continues. Maybe their UU roots will continue to fuel that. And we'll see where this goes. Maybe we'll yet. So, Occupy doing this, acknowledging the climate crisis, trying to save the world. It kind of sounds like UUs, doesn't it? Occupy and similar movements provide the energy. Universalists and Unitarians and UUs offer a theological context to ground and direct that energy. our Universalist ancestor Aidan Ballou, who was a Christian anarcho-socialist, wrote 200 years ago about nonviolent resistance. Some of us may remember the name Hosea Ballou, who was author of the Universalist classic A Treatise on Atonement. Aidan was a sort of distant cousin of Hosea Ballou. Unitarian Henry David Thoreau, transcendentalist, author of Walden and Civil Disobedience. These theologians had significant impact, as my colleague Abi Janamanchi will talk about in this video clip from General Assembly in 2012. So Occupy borrowed principles from Gandhi. Gandhi was influenced by Thoreau and Tolstoy. Tolstoy was influenced by Aidan Ballou. All of them showed the wisdom that we associate with the autumn of life, right? We associate Occupy with radical democracy and democratic transmission of wisdom. We associate autumn with wisdom, and so Occupy Autumn would be a radically democratic transmission of wisdom. And that would include the Protestant Reformation, sort of our religious roots, public libraries, the internet, the first time in history that regular people had access to all of the information in the world from all time. And I want to say that wisdom is knowing when to quit and to recognize when you've planned too much and to gracefully stop talking. We've got several videos in this service, and we want to make room for the special offertory coming up. Wisdom is knowing that silence can be golden. So may we be. And so if someone would go tell our special musical group that we are ready, I will launch an offering, because whether we are influencing the world in 1848 with tomes about nonviolence, or we are influencing congregations and therefore the world in 2023, we are helping each other to thrive and helping our world move and grow and evolve in the ways that we think are best. And to help make all that happen takes emotional energy, it takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes regular cash money. So if you are online, you can click the button and go to a place where you can donate with a credit card. If you are here in the room, we will pass baskets and you can put money, checks, cash, bearer bonds, small gold ingots in the baskets if you wish. But truly, whatever you are able to donate, we appreciate. We are most grateful for your donations.